It was just another rainy morning in a house that was far too quiet, but something in that cup of tea held a dark secret. With every sip, the old woman's health seemed to vanish along with her trust, and it was the courage of the one invisible person in the house that changed the course of everything. If this story caught your attention, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and let us know what city you're watching from. Now let's get back to it. The rain beat hard against the windows of the mansion on Park Avenue in New York City as Brenda arrived for another day of work. It was 6 o'clock on a grey Monday morning, and the imposing house with its 3 stories and gardens that looked like they were straight out of a magazine was already awake. The electronic gate opened slowly, and she entered through the side entrance just as she had for the past 4 years. Brenda didn't use the front door. Housekeepers never did. At 43, Brenda carried in her calloused hands and tired eyes the story of someone who had worked since she was young. She had started at 15 in a family's home in the South Bronx, and since then had moved through dozens of homes, always in the same role. The invisible woman who left everything sparkling. She knew every corner of that mansion better than the owners themselves. She knew which stair treads creaked, which faucet dripped in the middle of the night, and how the afternoon sun lit up the second-floor hallway, creating golden patterns on the marble floor. The house belonged to Michael Johnson, a 48-year-old entrepreneur who had built one of the country's largest tech companies from scratch. He was the kind of man who appeared on the covers of business magazines, always with that confident smile and an impeccable suit. Michael had an inspiring story of overcoming adversity. The son of a seamstress from rural West Virginia, he grew up watching his mother work late into the night to support the family after his father left them. His mother, Irene, was a simple woman who sold clothes door to door, carrying 2 heavy bags through the neighborhoods of Charleston, rain or shine. When Michael finally became wealthy, his first thought was to rescue his mother from that difficult life. 6 months ago, Irene had moved into the mansion in New York. At 72, she deserved to rest, Michael would tell anyone who would listen, and Brenda saw the genuine emotion in his eyes when he spoke of his mother. It was real love, the kind born from deep gratitude. But not everything in the mansion was as it seemed. Brenda entered through the kitchen, taking off her wet coat and hanging it on a chair. The house was too quiet for this time of day. Normally, Irene would already be awake, pottering around, trying to help even when Brenda insisted she didn't have to. The old woman was stubborn, with that stubborn Appalachian way of not being able to sit still. She liked to talk, to tell stories of the old days, to offer coffee with the cornbread she baked in secret, because her daughter-in-law didn't approve. Vivian, Michael's wife, was the opposite of everything Irene represented. Thin, elegant, always perfumed and perfectly put together even at home, she came from an old-money New York family. With a business degree from an expensive private university, she spoke 3 languages and had the air of someone born knowing the world was at her disposal. She had married Michael 5 years ago in a lavish ceremony that was featured on every celebrity website. At the time, his business was just starting to take off, and she was the perfect woman to accompany him, beautiful, cultured, well-connected. Brenda had always found Vivian too cold, polite certainly, but there was something in her eyes that never truly smiled. And since Irene arrived, that coldness had transformed into something else, something Brenda couldn't name, but that deeply unsettled her. She went up the stairs to the second floor where Irene's room was. The door was closed. She knocked lightly and heard a weak voice from the other side. Upon entering, she found the old woman still in bed, pale with dark circles under her eyes. "Good morning, Irene. Are you not feeling well today?" "Brenda, my dear, I think I ate something that didn't agree with me. I spent the whole night with an upset stomach, and my head, it feels like there's a weight inside it." Brenda felt a tightness in her chest. It wasn't the first time. In recent weeks, Irene had been showing these symptoms with increasing frequency. Nausea, dizziness, mental confusion. Michael had taken his mother to the doctor twice, and both times the diagnosis was vague. Maybe it was her age. Maybe stress from the move. Maybe the start of some vitamin deficiency. The tests showed nothing serious. But Brenda had noticed a detail that no one else seemed to see. Irene always got worse after drinking the afternoon tea that Vivian prepared especially for her. At first, Brenda thought she was imagining things. After all, who was she to suspect her employer, a respected, well-educated woman who lived in a mansion and had everything? But the suspicion kept growing like a weed sprouting through the cracks in the pavement. "I'll make you some chamomile tea," Brenda said, fluffing the pillows. "And today you're staying in bed to rest. I'll take care of everything." "Thank you, my dear. You're an angel. I don't know what I'd do without you here." Those words touched Brenda deeply. Irene treated her like a person, an equal. She asked about her children, remembered their names, took a genuine interest in her life. It wasn't common. In most of the houses where she had worked, Brenda was just a pair of hands that cleaned and cooked. Invisible, but to Irene she was Brenda, a woman with a story, a family with feelings. As she left the room, Brenda nearly bumped into Vivian in the hallway. The woman was impeccable even at that hour of the morning, wearing an expensive workout set and her hair pulled back in a perfect ponytail. "How is she?" Vivian asked, but her tone was more perfunctory than concerned. "She's feeling sick again, Mrs. Johnson. Said she was nauseous all night." Vivian sighed, as if it were an inconvenience. Brenda noticed a strange glint in her eyes, a mixture of irritation and something else, something that seemed, for a moment, almost like satisfaction. "It must be her age. The elderly get sensitive. I'll prepare her tea later, as I always do. It's important to maintain her routine." Brenda just nodded, but her stomach churned. That tea. Always that tea. The day passed slowly. Michael was away on business in Chicago and wouldn't be back until the next day. The mansion seemed larger and quieter without him. Brenda took care of Irene, brought her light soup, changed the sheets, helped her to the bathroom. The old woman improved a little over the hours, regaining some color in her face. Around 5 in the afternoon, Vivian entered the kitchen. Brenda was washing dishes, but from where she stood, she could see the marble countertop where her employer began to prepare the tea. She saw Vivian get the kettle, put water on to boil, and take out a chamomile tea bag. Everything was normal up to that point. But then, when she thought no one was looking, Vivian opened a specific drawer, the one under the oven that no one ever used. From it, she took out a small, clear vial. Brenda couldn't see exactly what it was, but she saw her employer pour a few drops into the tea, stir it with a spoon, and quickly put the vial back. Brenda's heart pounded. She pretended to be focused on the dishes, but every cell in her body was on high alert. Vivian prepared the cup on a tray, placed a couple of shortbread cookies beside it, and went upstairs. Brenda waited a few minutes. Her hands were shaking. Her head was spinning. It couldn't be what she was thinking. It couldn't. But what if it was? What if it wasn't paranoia? What if Irene was being poisoned in her own home, under the roof of the son who loved her, by the hands of the woman he trusted blindly? When Vivian came back down, Brenda heard her leave through the garage. She was going to the gym, as she did every afternoon. Brenda had at least an hour and a half. It was now or never. She ran up to Irene's room and entered without knocking. The old woman was about to bring the cup to her lips. "Wait, Irene, don't drink it." The old woman looked up, startled. Brenda carefully took the cup from her hands. The liquid, still steaming. "Why, my dear, is it too hot?" Brenda didn't know what to say. She couldn't just make an accusation without proof, but she also couldn't let the woman drink any more of it. "Let me cool it down a bit for you, and I'll bring you the tea I made this morning. It's much better." Irene smiled, suspecting nothing. Brenda went downstairs with the cup, poured the contents down the toilet, and washed it thoroughly. Then she went straight to the kitchen and opened the drawer under the oven. There it was, a small, clear, unlabeled vial containing a colorless liquid. She picked it up with a dish towel, feeling the weight of her suspicions turn into certainty. She needed proof. She needed to understand what was happening. And above all, she needed to protect Irene, no matter the cost. Because in that mansion of marble and perfect gardens, someone was plotting something terrible, and the only person who seemed to notice was her, the invisible woman who cleaned the corners and heard what no one else listened to. That night, Brenda barely slept. She hid the vial in her purse and decided that the next morning, when Michael returned, She would have to find a way to make him see what she was seeing. But how could she make such a successful, confident man believe that his own wife, the woman who slept beside him every night, could be trying to harm his own mother-in-law? It was an unequal fight. Brenda with her minimum wage and simple life against Vivian with her prestigious last name and social standing. But if there was one thing Brenda had learned in life, it was that you didn't have to be strong to win, you had to be smart, and smart was time to prove that sometimes the person who sees the furthest isn't the one at the top but the one on the ground, watching every step taken around them. Are you enjoying this story? Tell me what you think of it and how you think it will end. Dawn broke slowly over New York, painting the sky orange and pink as the city was still waking up. Brenda hadn't slept a wink all night. Lying in the small housekeeper's room at the back of the mansion, she stared at the ceiling, mentally replaying everything she had seen. The vial was hidden at the bottom of her purse, wrapped in a cloth. It was proof, but of what exactly? And how could she prove something when her word was worth less than Vivian's elegant silence? At 5:30 in the morning, she was already up. She took a quick shower, put on her uniform and made coffee. Her routine was automatic after so many years, but today every gesture felt charged with meaning. Michael would be back at noon, and Brenda needed a plan. She couldn't just walk up and accuse his wife. Men like Michael didn't believe housekeepers. They believed in evidence, in logic, in facts. She went up to Irene's room at 6 o'clock sharp. The old woman was sleeping peacefully, her breathing soft. At least last night she hadn't drunk that damn tea. Brenda felt a momentary relief, but she knew she couldn't watch over the woman 24 hours a day. Vivian would find another opportunity. The morning passed in a silent tension. Vivian woke up late, around 10, and came down to the kitchen wearing a white silk robe. She greeted Brenda with a cold nod and made her usual green smoothie. She didn't mention yesterday's tea, nor did she ask how Irene was. She simply acted as if nothing had happened, as if there were no rotten secrets festering under the Persian rug in the living room. Brenda watched her out of the corner of her eye while pretending to be busy organizing the pantry. Vivian was on her phone typing messages urgently, her face tense. Every now and then, she would glance at the wall clock, as if waiting for something or someone. There was a nervousness there, an anxiety she tried to hide, but that seeped through her quick gestures and the way she bit her lower lip. Michael arrived exactly at noon, as he had said. Brenda heard the sound of the car pulling into the garage and the familiar sound of his footsteps down the hall. He was a tall man, with broad shoulders, who walked with the confidence of someone who had built an empire with his own hands. He was wearing a navy blue suit and carrying a leather briefcase. Vivian went out to greet him with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. They kissed quickly, and Michael asked about his mother. "She's not doing too well, honey. She felt sick again yesterday. I think we need to take her to a specialist, run some more detailed tests." Brenda felt anger boil inside her. How did Vivian have the nerve to feign concern, to suggest doctors when she herself was the cause of Irene's suffering? It was a perfect performance, award-worthy. Michael went straight up to see his mother. Brenda followed him with a tray of light lunch she had prepared. She found him sitting on the edge of the bed, holding the old woman's hand, his face marked with genuine worry. "Mom, you need to get better. I'm going to book the best doctors in New York. We're going to find out what's going on." Irene smiled weakly. "Son, you don't need to worry so much. It's probably just old age. Brenda has been taking such good care of me." Michael looked at Brenda and nodded gratefully. "Thank you for looking after her. I know I can trust you." Those words gave Brenda a spark of courage. If he trusted her, maybe there was a chance to make him listen. But she had to be strategic. She couldn't seem hysterical or paranoid. "Mr. Johnson, could I speak with you in private later? It's about Irene's health." He agreed distractedly, still focused on his mother. "Later, Brenda. I want to spend some time with her now." The afternoon dragged on in a tense routine. Brenda cleaned the entire house, but her mind was elsewhere, mentally rehearsing how she would approach Michael. She needed more than the vial. She needed a pattern, evidence he couldn't ignore. That's when she had an idea. Her nephew, Andrew, worked as a security guard at an office building, and knew about cameras and technology. If she could install a hidden camera in the kitchen, she could catch Vivian in the act. It would be the irrefutable proof she needed. At 4 in the afternoon, when Vivian left for her Pilates class, Brenda took the opportunity to go to Irene's room again. The old woman was awake, sitting in an armchair by the window, looking out at the garden. "Irene, can I ask you a personal question?" "Of course, my dear, go ahead." "Have you ever noticed anything strange about the food or drinks that Mrs. Johnson prepares for you?" The old woman thought for a moment, her brow furrowed. "You know, I never thought about it, but now that you mention it, the tea she makes has a slightly bitter taste. I always thought it was the type of chamomile she uses, but it's different from what I used to drink. Why? Is something wrong?" Brenda didn't want to scare her, but she needed her cooperation. "Irene, I'm going to be honest with you. I have a very serious suspicion, but I need proof before I talk to your son. Do you trust me?" "I trust you more than a lot of people out there, Brenda." "Then please don't drink anything else that Mrs. Johnson prepares. Say you have no appetite, that you'd prefer water. Any excuse, but please don't drink it." Irene gripped Brenda's hand tightly, her eyes wide. "My God, do you think that she's hurting me?" "I think so, Irene, and I'm going to prove it." That night, Brenda called her nephew. Andrew arrived at the mansion around 11 when everyone was asleep. She let him in through the back door, and together they installed a tiny camera on the spice rack in the kitchen, positioned to film the exact spot on the counter where Vivian prepared the tea. The device was connected to Brenda's phone, allowing her to watch everything in real time and record it. "Now we just wait, Auntie. If anything strange happens, you'll have proof." Andrew left before anyone woke up, and Brenda finally managed to get a few hours of fitful sleep. The next day started like any other. Michael left early for an important meeting. Vivian woke up, made her smoothie, took calls. Irene stayed in her room, following Brenda's request. And Brenda cleaned, cooked and tidied up, but always with an eye on the phone hidden in her apron pocket. At 5 in the afternoon it happened. Brenda was mopping the downstairs hallway when she saw on her phone that Vivian had entered the kitchen. The woman looked around, checking to see if she was alone. Then, with quick, precise movements, she took the kettle, filled it with water and turned on the stove. While the water boiled, she opened the drawer under the oven and took out the vial. Brenda's heart beat so hard, she thought she would faint. There it was. The proof. Vivian poured several drops of the colorless liquid into a porcelain cup, added the chamomile tea bag and the hot water. She stirred it well, tasted a tiny bit on her fingertip as if testing the temperature, and then arranged everything on a tray with cookies. Brenda recorded every second. Her hands were shaking so much she almost dropped the phone. When Vivian went upstairs with the tray, she ran to intercept her in the hallway. "Mrs. Johnson, let me take that. You already do so much for Irene." Vivian hesitated, clearly annoyed by the interruption. "That's not necessary, Brenda. I'll take it myself." But Brenda had already taken the tray from her hands. "I insist, Mrs. Johnson. It's part of my job." Vivian's eyes narrowed, a flash of anger crossing her perfectly made-up face, but she couldn't refuse without seeming strange. She handed over the tray and turned back, returning to her room with heavy steps. Brenda took the tray to Irene's room but didn't let the old woman drink the tea. She poured it all down the toilet and prepared a fresh cup of genuine tea with no poison, no lies. That evening, when Michael returned from work, Brenda was waiting for him in the kitchen. It was time to reveal everything. "Mr. Johnson, I need to talk to you. It's urgent and it's about Irene." He sensed the seriousness in her tone and agreed. They went to his office, a room with shelves full of books and a huge mahogany desk. Brenda closed the door. "You're going to think what I'm about to say is crazy, but I swear on my life and my children's lives that it's the truth. Your wife is poisoning your mother." Michael turned pale. "What?" "Brenda, that's a very serious accusation." "I know, Mr. Johnson, and I wouldn't make it if I wasn't sure and didn't have proof." She showed him the video on her phone. Michael watched in silence, his expression changing with every second. First disbelief, then confusion, and finally the contained fury of a man watching his entire life fall apart. When the video ended, he was silent for a long time. Brenda could hear her own heart beating. Michael finally looked up and she saw tears in his eyes. "Thank you for having the courage to tell me. Thank you for protecting my mother. I don't even know what to say." "So you believe me?" "I do. And we're taking this video to the police tonight. But first I need to confirm something. That vial she's using, I need to know what's in it." Brenda took the vial from her purse, still wrapped in the cloth. "I got it yesterday, Mr. Johnson, before she could use it again." Michael held the vial as if it were a bomb about to explode. "I'll have it analyzed. In the meantime, Vivian can't suspect anything. I need you to keep acting normally, taking care of my mother, protecting her. I'll handle the rest." That night, the mansion seemed even quieter than usual. Brenda lay in her bed, knowing she had done the right thing, but unable to shake the fear that gripped her chest. She had challenged a powerful woman, exposed secrets that were meant to stay hidden, and she didn't know what the consequences would be, only that she couldn't have remained silent while a life was being stolen drop by drop, cup by cup, day after day. Upstairs, Irene slept peacefully for the first time in weeks, and in the master bedroom, Vivian stared at the ceiling, unaware that the net around her was closing in, and that the invisible housekeeper she had never truly noticed would be her downfall. The next 3 days were the longest of Brenda's life. Michael took the vial to a private lab for analysis, requesting absolute confidentiality and urgency. While they waited for the results, life in the mansion continued with a forced normality that was suffocating. Brenda cared for Irene with renewed attention, never leaving her alone, always checking everything she ate or drank. Vivian noticed the change, but said nothing, just watched with those cold eyes that revealed no thoughts. Michael started working from home, something he never did. He said he needed to be close to his mother, but Brenda knew the truth. He was watching his own wife, waiting for the result that would confirm the unthinkable. The tension in the house was palpable, as if everyone were breathing the same heavy, poisonous air. It was on a Thursday morning, as a light rain fell over New York, that Michael received the call from the lab. Brenda was close enough to see the color drain from his face as he listened. When he hung up, he called her into his office again. "The results are in. It was arsenic, Brenda, arsenic in small doses, calculated to cause chronic symptoms that mimic degenerative diseases. If my mother had kept drinking that, in a few weeks, maybe a month." He couldn't finish the sentence. Brenda felt a chill run down her spine. Arsenic, real poison. It was no longer a suspicion or paranoia. It was attempted murder, happening inside that house under crystal chandeliers and expensive paintings. "Are you going to call the police now?" "I am, but first, I need to understand why. I need to hear it from her. I need to know how the woman I shared my life, my bed, my dreams with, got to this point." Michael sent Brenda to get Vivian. She was in her room getting ready to go out. When she came down and saw her husband in the office with that serious expression, something in her face changed. It was as if she knew instinctively that the game was over. "We need to talk, Vivian. Sit down." She sat, crossing her legs with studied elegance, but Brenda noticed her hands were trembling slightly. "About what, honey?" Michael threw the lab report on the desk. "About this. About the arsenic you've been putting in my mother's tea for weeks." The silence that followed was deafening. Vivian turned pale but quickly composed her expression. "I don't know what you're talking about. This is ridiculous." "Is it? Then explain this video." Michael played the recording Brenda had made on his computer. Vivian watched in silence, and when it was over, something inside her broke. The mask of elegance and control fell away, revealing a different woman, hard and bitter. "Fine, you caught me. Congratulations. You must be happy, right? Always the perfect son, the self-made man, the successful entrepreneur who never forgets his humble origins. How lovely, how inspiring." Her voice dripped with sarcasm and anger. Michael stood up, incredulous. "You tried to kill my mother and you're angry at me. What happened to you, Vivian? What happened? You really want to know?" "I'll tell you then." When we got married, I thought I was marrying an ambitious man who wanted to conquer the world. And you did, but you know what came with it? This sick obsession with your dear little mother. Everything is about her. Every dinner, every conversation, every decision. And when you finally decided to bring her to live here, that was the last straw. Brenda listened. From the corner of the office where Michael had asked her to stay, she was shocked by Vivian's coldness, by the cruel way she spoke of Irene. My mother never did anything to you, Vivian. Did nothing. She did everything. Subtle comparisons. Those comments about how I can't cook, how I spend too much, how women of her generation were stronger and more dedicated. She looked at me like I wasn't good enough for her precious son. And you? You never defended me. You always took her side. Michael shook his head in disbelief. So you decided to kill her? That was your plan? Vivian laughed, a bitter, humorless sound. It wasn't just that, Michael. Or do you think I don't know about the debts? The loans you took out to save the company last year. The life insurance policy you took out on your mother, naming me as the beneficiary if something happened to both of you. I saw the papers, Michael. $2 million. Enough money to start my life over, far away from all this. The revelation landed like a bomb. Brenda felt her stomach turn. So that was it. It wasn't just hatred or jealousy, it was money. It was always money when people showed their true colors. You're a murderer, Michael said, his voice low and controlled, but vibrating with fury. You planned to kill my mother for money, and because you didn't like her, and I, blind, trusted you. I slept next to you every night without knowing I was sharing a bed with someone capable of this. Vivian stood up, her eyes shining with tears that seemed more like anger than remorse. I had another life before you, Michael. I had possibilities, options, dreams, and I traded it all for this marriage, for this life as a trophy wife, always smiling at your parties, always playing the part of the perfect woman. But no one asked what I wanted. No one cared if I was happy. I was erased, just like that housekeeper over there in the corner, invisible. Brenda felt the comparison like a slap. How dare Vivian compare her life of luxury and privilege to hers? How dare she play the victim when she was trying to kill a defenseless old woman? The difference is, I would never kill anyone to get what I want, Brenda said, her voice firm. And you always had choices. Irene didn't. Her whole life was hard work and sacrifice. And you, who had everything handed to you, decided to end her life out of pure selfishness. Vivian looked at Brenda with contempt. Ah, the hero of the story. The brave housekeeper who saved the day. What a pathetic cliché. Do you think he'll reward you, that your life will change? You'll continue to be what you've always been. Nothing. Enough, Michael shouted, slamming his hand on the desk. The police are on their way. You're going to answer for attempted murder. And you're going to pay for every drop of poison, for every time my mother felt sick because of you. At that moment, the office door opened. Irene entered, leaning on a walker, her face marked by the pain and understanding of what she had just heard. She had come down the stairs slowly, drawn by the raised voices, and had heard everything. So it was true, the old woman said, her voice trembling. You tried to kill me, girl, in my son's house, under the same roof. Vivian looked at her mother-in-law, and for a brief instant, something that might have been remorse crossed her face, but it was gone too quickly, replaced by the same mask of coldness. I wouldn't expect you to understand. No one understands. I understand perfectly, Irene replied. I understand that you're an empty woman who never knew what real love is, who confuses comfort with happiness and money with fulfillment. I spent my whole life with nothing and was happy because I had my son and my dignity. You have everything and have nothing because you can only see yourself. The old woman's words echoed in the office. Minutes later, the doorbell rang. It was 2 police, officers whom Michael had discreetly called even before confronting Vivian. She was led away in handcuffs, still wearing her designer outfit, still perfumed and put together, but now without the air of superiority that had always surrounded her. Brenda watched it all from the window. She saw the police car drive away, taking Vivian far from that mansion, far from the life she had tried to manipulate in her favor. She felt relief, but also a deep sadness. Because in the end, all of this could have been avoided if people knew how to talk to each other, if pride and ambition didn't blind their hearts. That night, Michael sat with his mother in the living room. Brenda brought them real tea, prepared by her, with no secrets, no poison. The three of them talked for hours. Michael apologized to his mother for not noticing, for trusting blindly, for almost losing her. Irene, with the wisdom of someone who had lived a long life, simply held her son's hand and said she forgave him, because to err was human, but to recognize the error and fix it was divine. And Brenda, the invisible woman who became visible when it mattered most, received the thanks she never expected, but knew she deserved. Michael looked at her with tears in his eyes. "You saved my mother, Brenda. You saved her when I failed. I'll never be able to repay you properly, but you can be sure that your life is going to change from this day forward. You're not a housekeeper. You're family." Those words touched Brenda's heart deeply. It wasn't for the recognition or the promise of a reward. It was because, finally, someone had seen in her what she had always been. A woman of value, of courage, of principles. Someone who chose to do the right thing even when it could have cost her everything. The following weeks brought profound changes. Vivian was indicted and awaited trial. The investigation revealed she had massive debts from online gambling, addictions she had hidden from her husband for years. Irene's life insurance policy was cancelled. The divorce was initiated. And in the mansion on Park Avenue, life began again, but differently. Irene recovered completely, regaining her energy and lucidity. Brenda was promoted to Irene's official caregiver, with a fair salary and dignity. And Michael, humbled and transformed by the experience, learned that wealth can't buy character, and that sometimes the greatest treasures are hidden in the simplest corners of life. 6 months had passed since that fateful night when the truth came to light. Spring arrived in New York, bringing flowers to the mansion's gardens and a lightness that hadn't been felt within those walls for a long time. Vivian's trial had ended 2 weeks earlier, resulting in an 8-year prison sentence for aggravated attempted murder. The newspaper headlines had covered the case for weeks, turning the story into a kind of real-life drama that shocked the New York elite. Brenda woke up that Saturday morning with the sun streaming through the window of her new room, which was much larger and more comfortable than her old one. Michael had insisted she move into one of the guest rooms on the 2nd floor, arguing that it made no sense for her to stay in the back when she was practically part of the family. At first, Brenda resisted, feeling uncomfortable with so much change, but Irene was the one who convinced her. "Honey, you deserve comfort and dignity. Get used to it because life is changing for the better," the old woman had said with that warm smile that had returned to light up her face. And it really was changing. Brenda now earned a salary 3 times her previous one, was officially on the payroll with full benefits, and her duties had been redefined. She was no longer a housekeeper, but Irene's caregiver and companion focused solely on the old woman's well-being. Michael hired a cleaning service that came 3 times a week to take care of the house. She went down to the kitchen and found Irene already awake, making coffee. The old woman had completely recovered her health, and with it came a surprising vitality. At 72, she refused to sit still. She had started sewing again, now as a hobby, creating pieces she donated to charities. She also began teaching craft classes at a local non-profit, teaching low-income women how to create products that could generate income. "Good morning, my dear. Did you sleep well?" "Very well, Irene. But you didn't have to be making coffee. I can do that." "Oh, Brenda, I need to feel useful. Let me do something, or I'll get rusty." The two of them laughed, and Brenda felt that good sense of belonging that had been filling her heart. This house, which was once just her workplace, now truly felt like a home. They sat down together for coffee, talking about their plans for the day. They would have visitors in the afternoon. Brenda's children, Marcus and Julia, were coming for lunch at the mansion, something that had become a Saturday routine. Michael came down a little later, wearing casual clothes, a far cry from the always impeccable executive he used to be. The experience with Vivian had transformed him deeply. He stopped working 15-hour days and started delegating more, prioritizing time with his family. He also began therapy, recognizing that he needed to deal with the emotional wounds of that betrayal and the guilt of not having seen the signs. "Good morning, Mom." "Good morning, Brenda. How are my favorite ladies?" Brenda smiled. She was still getting used to the new dynamic, to being treated as an equal, to participating in family conversations and decisions. Her children were adapting too. Marcus, 22, was finishing his engineering degree on a full scholarship that Michael had arranged for him. Julia, 19, was in nursing school and worked part-time at a hospital, but now with less financial pressure thanks to her mother's new salary. Brenda's story had taken on proportions she never imagined. After the case went to trial and the details came to light, several media outlets approached her for interviews. At first, she refused them all, afraid and ashamed of the exposure. But Michael encouraged her, saying that her courage could inspire other people in similar situations. "You have a voice, Brenda, and that voice can help a lot of people. Don't be afraid to use it." She eventually agreed to an interview for a major television program. Sitting in the studio, with the bright lights and cameras pointed at her, Brenda told her story with the same simplicity and truth with which she had always lived. She spoke about the signs she noticed, the fear of not being believed, and the decision to act even knowing it could cost her her job. The response was enormous. Thousands of messages poured in for her through the social media accounts her children helped her create. Other housekeepers wrote to her, sharing similar situations, asking for advice, and thanking her for bringing visibility to a class of workers often ignored and undervalued. Brenda realized that her story was bigger than herself. It represented all the invisible women who support homes without receiving the recognition they deserve. That's when Michael had an idea. One evening, while talking with his mother and Brenda, he proposed creating a foundation dedicated to the protection and empowerment of domestic workers. The foundation would offer training courses, free legal assistance, psychological support, and an anonymous reporting channel for cases of abuse. The name suggested by Irene was the Attentive Eye Foundation, in honor of Brenda's ability to see what others missed. Brenda would be the foundation's social director, working directly with the beneficiaries while continuing to care for Irene. It was a new phase of her life, one she had never dreamed possible. That Saturday afternoon, when her children arrived for lunch, Brenda greeted them at the front door of the mansion, not the back one. It was a symbolic gesture, but one filled with meaning. Marcus and Julia hugged their mother, pride written all over their faces. They knew what she had faced, the risks she had taken, and they admired her immensely for it. Lunch was lively. Irene told stories from when Michael was a child and she would so late into the night to buy his school notebooks. Michael recalled the hardships they had faced and how his mother's determination had inspired him never to give up. And Brenda, surrounded by these people who had become her second family, felt a deep gratitude for her life and the choices she had made. After lunch, they all went out to the garden. Michael had a gazebo built, and that's where they liked to have coffee and talk. The afternoon was beautiful, with a blue sky and a gentle breeze that swayed the flowers. "Mum, Brenda, I have some news for you," Michael said, a special sparkle in his eyes. "The Attentive Eye Foundation is officially registered and running. We already have 50 workers signed up, 3 volunteer lawyers, and a partnership with the city government to expand the project. And what's more, I received an offer from a television network to make a documentary about your story, showing the importance of respect and dignity in domestic work." Irene clapped her hands, moved. "Oh, son, I'm so proud. You've turned a tragedy into something beautiful." "It wasn't me, Mom, it was Brenda. She was the one who had courage when I was a coward. She was the one who saw when I was blind." Brenda felt tears well up in her eyes. "It wasn't just my merit. We all did it together. You taught me what true kindness is, Irene. And you, Mr. Johnson, you taught me that there are good people willing to do the right thing when they discover the truth." The sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. There, in that garden that once held dark secrets, hope was now blooming. The mansion was no longer a scene of conspiracy and lies, but a home where people respected and cared for one another. Weeks later, Brenda was at the office of the Attentive Eye Foundation, meeting with a young worker who was suffering abuse in the house where she worked. She listened to the young woman's story attentively, took down all the details, and referred her for legal assistance. Before the young woman left, Brenda held her hand. "You are not alone. Your work has value, and you deserve respect. Never let anyone make you believe you're invisible just because you clean other people's houses. We are all visible, and our dignity doesn't depend on anyone's approval." The young woman left the office crying, but they were tears of relief. For the first time, someone had believed her. When Brenda returned to the mansion at the end of the day, she found Irene in the living room, sewing a blanket for donation. The old woman looked up and smiled. "How was your day?" "Intense, but good. I helped a young woman today. I think I made a difference in her life." "I'm sure you did, my dear. You have this gift of seeing people and making them feel important. I learned from the best." The two women hugged, and in that moment Brenda understood that her journey had not been in vain. She was no longer the invisible woman who entered through the back door. She was Brenda, a woman of courage and principles, who had turned her pain into purpose and her invisibility into a light for others still living in the shadows. Vivian's story ended in a cold cell, paying for her choices. But Brenda's story was just beginning, proving that true heroes don't always wear capes or live in palaces. Sometimes they wear simple uniforms and have calloused hands, but they carry in their hearts a love big enough to save lives and change destinies. And so, on the busy streets of New York, amidst the noise of cars and the rush of daily life, a mansion on Park Avenue became a symbol that truth always wins, that courage knows no social class, and that sometimes the most important person in a house is the very one no one usually sees. End of story. Dear listeners, we hope the story of Brenda, Irene, and Michael has touched your heart. If you were moved by the courage of this woman who chose to do the right thing, even when everything was against her, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments which moment stood out to you the most. Would you have had the same courage as Brenda? Have you ever been in a similar situation? Share it with us. Every day we bring you intense stories like this one, revealing the deepest side of the human soul and celebrating the invisible heroes who surround us. Don't forget to hit that notification bell so you don't miss an episode. We'll see you in the next story, which promises to be even more emotional. Until then, remember, never underestimate the power of someone who sees what others prefer to ignore.